the demigods, being severely oppressed by their enemies and being unable to see Indra on the battlefield, were very anxious. Having no captain or leader, they began lamenting like traders in a wrecked vessel in the midst of the ocean. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. From this statement, it appears that in the upper planetary system there is shipping, and that traders there engage in navigation as their occupational duty. Sometimes, as on this planet, these traders are shipwrecked in the middle of the ocean. It appears that even in the upper planetary system, such calamities occasionally take place. The upper planetary system in the creation of the Lord is certainly not vacant or devoid of living entities. From Srimad Bhagavatam, we understand that every planet is full of living entities, just as Earth is. There is no reason to accept that on other planetary systems there are no living beings. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So I'm going to go back now to verse 9. That's where we finished off yesterday. And each verse, I'm going to read it, and even though there's no purports, if there's something that comes to reflection, I will make a comment on it. Text 9. Navayam manuyam anam atmanam tatra sarunam girava sarushoyanam grinimo marma tadinaha. You demigods think that your own selves are the cause of your attaining fame and victory. Because of your ignorance, saintly persons feel sorry for you. Therefore, although your words afflict the heart, we do not accept them. So this is Bali Maharaj speaking. And he is speaking to Indra. There's a previous verse, there was a purport in that one. And it's interesting because Bali Maharaj is an enemy of Indra. And we know there's a famous verse that talks about Krishna's two Bhagavan Swayam, whose purposes of descending is to kill or annihilate the enemies of Indra. And here's Bali Maharaj speaking such erudite words. It's also interesting here that Bali Maharaj, although he's one of the great Mahajans, or spiritual leaders, or one who can give us the truth, he's feeling afflicted by harsh words. And it's interesting because in this, we hear many times in these conflicts between Kshatriyas, they say insulting words or they say harsh words. So he's feeling afflicted. He felt afflicted. It's interesting because sometimes we may have some notion that the pure devotees, the advanced devotees, don't feel the pain of sharp words. But words hurt. Actually, anyone who's got a wife knows how how much words can hurt. Anyway, it's interesting here. Anyone who's got a husband knows how words can hurt. Shri Shuka Uvacha Itcha Chikusha Vibam Viro Niracher Vira Mardanaha Akarna Purner Ahanad Aksheper Ahatam Puna. Shukadeva Goswami said, after thus rebuking Indra, king of heaven, with sharp words, Bali Maharaj, who could subdue any other hero, drew back to his ear the arrows known as Narachas and attacked Indra with these arrows. Then he again chastised Indra with strong words. So not only is he releasing arrows, but he's also releasing words. And this is very common. If you get into a conflict, there's posturing, then there's strong words. You basically want to attack the other person by words. When I was a child, sometimes the kid would say, sticks and stones will break your bones, but names will never hurt me. Have you ever heard that saying as a kid? But actually, words do hurt. And sometimes words hurt deeper than your bone's been broken, because somehow the word that someone says lasts a long time. And it's also said that words are like arrows. Once you let go of that bow, there's nothing you can do to bring it back. It's gone. It's going to have its effect. Now, this is also interesting because it's kind of related to you could say, the theme of the purport later on. Why would the demigods be using bows and arrows? Why aren't they using some kind of sophisticated nuclear weaponry or some kind of clever technological, weapons that we have today? Why are they using, bows and arrows? And it may give the idea that this can't possibly be a true story because it's talking about primitive weaponry. If the highest beings in our universe were actually there, then surely their weaponry must be a lot more sophisticated than what we have today. But we can see actually these are not ordinary bows and arrows. There's a devotee. Where is he? Not here. And he's an archer. So if you talk to him, he'll tell you how to make a bow and how far these bows can go, the right kind of wood that you can use. And sometimes he said he would fire 2 arrows at one time to a target. A certain trajectory you go, and you hold the bow in a certain way and you let it go. And when we went to with Spain with the Pandavasena, we went on this archery range. We fired the bow. So one little arrow, you might get in a target. Somehow these arrows are different. They're imbued with a certain kind of potency. It's not the bow and arrow of Robin Hood. They have some kind of incredible, as we hear a little later. Evam nirikrito deva vairina tataya vadinam nimrishatad adikshepam tatrahata ivadvipa. Since Maharaj Bali's rebukes were truthful, King Indra did not at all become sorry. Just as an elephant beaten by its driver's rod does not become agitated. So somehow or other, when Indra heard the words of Bali, and because the words were truthful, he didn't become sorry. He kind of felt, satisfied by it. He wasn't insulted by it. And we could say, we hear of personal experiences like that. If there's someone that you see as a superior and you have a lot of respect for them, if they say some rebuking words that are truthful, you may feel enlivened by it. You may even look forward to having such a rebuke. And particularly in the relationship between the spiritual master and the disciple, this will be a common expression. We hear devotees who've been chastised by Srila Prabhupada felt they were blessed by having such a chastisement. So I don't know exactly whether this is the case here, but certainly Indra, he didn't become sorry by hearing such rebukes. Now in elephants, if you recall, on Krishna's feet, there's a goad for prodding an elephant. It's actually quite a vicious looking tool. It's a small stick, it's got a spike on it, and it's got a little hook on it. So you basically because an elephant, you don't drive, you drive an elephant by its ear. You pull in its ear, you jab your feet into its various way, and you drive it. And I also understand that in war, if the elephant turned round and went the opposite way, with killing your own soldiers, you'd have to kill it. And you kill it by sticking this thing in its head. You would die that way. Anyway, so there's a certain goad, and you've got to poke this big elephant. So it describes here the elephant doesn't get agitated. Now I suppose the closest thing that we can reflect to this is bulls. We have a goad. Interesting enough, it's described that a Vaishya becomes purified by touching that goad of a bull. So you have to tap it. And the bull doesn't get agitated. Young ones do, because they're not sure the relationship between the stick and their motion. They're not quite sure. Sometimes they get a bit restless. You can see them. But the older ones, they're just nonchalant. So in other words, the elephant doesn't get agitated by the prodding of its driver. You can understand that's what its duty is to do. Text 12. Praharat kulisham tasma amogam para mardanaha sayano nyapatad bhumo china paksha ivochalaha. When Indra, the defeater of enemies, released his infallible thunderbolt scepter at Bali Maharaj with a desire to kill him, Bali Maharaj indeed fell to the ground with his aeroplane like a mountain with its wings cut off. Very short purport. In many descriptions in Vedic literature, it is found that mountains also fly in the sky with wings. When such mountains are dead, they fall to the ground, where they stay as very large dead bodies. So it's here, what's interesting is the thunderbolt is a scepter. So a scepter is like something you hold with a stick, and it's got usually some kind of thing on the top. I mean, maybe is it the Pope's thing called a scepter? And usually a scepter is some kind of a wand type shape. So this thunderbolt is like that. Does he throw it like a spear? Does he throw it like a boomerang? I don't know, but he throws this thunderbolt. And being a Kshatriya, he had a desire to kill him. This is interesting. One sense, I remember many years ago we had these martial artists from North India came here. They're doing this martial artist exhibition. And imagine someone attacking you who actually wants to kill you with a sharp weapon. How would you respond? If you're excited about it and you want to kill him in return, it means you're kind of a Kshatriya type person. You're enlivened. In fact, this is one of the qualities of a Kshatriya. Was it apalinat? What's that word? You enthusiastic in battle or something, not fearful in battle, in the qualities of a Kshatriya. So this throwing scepters is kind of the realm of the Kshatriyas. Now here's something very controversial. How do we answer this? Flying mountains. We have to be clear about these things, because these scriptures, people will pick and choose selective verses to refute every single thing the scriptures say. And this verse may be one of those verses they would choose. Come on, guys. I can't believe what you say. You're talking about flying mountains in your scripture. So we have to be clear about it. How would we possibly answer something like this? What do we say? I mean, is there any archaeological evidence for it? You could argue. Is there? I don't know. Maybe there is some archaeological evidence they haven't really ascertained yet. Maybe there's just suddenly a rock strata stuck in somewhere that they can't explain how it got there. Perhaps there is some evidence. Maybe they'll find it someday. Is it that all mountains flew, or just some of them? I don't know. I didn't research all the different examples where mountains fly. Can we explain it? Can we give any explanation at all how someone could rationalize a flying mountain? I thought perhaps, well, the Earth. The Earth's a pretty big mountain. I don't know how many tons it weighs. It's floating. It's floating somewhere. There is some motion that's moving it around the sun. It's not falling down anywhere. So there is some idea there. We also hear about the 8 cities, how yogis have the ability to be lighter than a feather. They can float. And there is some scientific evidence for that. Dhrutakama talks about this type of evidence, and he gives an example. I'm not sure it was the Kures or someone, I think I may have mentioned before. And there's one experiment they had where they had some kind of clairvoyant or someone who had these kind of abilities. And they took them to a hotel room with controlled environment. And this person, in front of all the scientists, levitated, floated out the window, and floated back. This is witnessed by all these scientists. So there is some evidence there, but of course you don't hear about this. I never learned that in school. It's something you have to go to a spooky book in school. But there's evidence for this kind of thing. And there are many stories, particularly in Indian histories, where this is quite a common event, where miraculous things would happen. So there is some evidence for it, but you have to be able to carefully present it. And we have to, I suppose, not all of it, but we should have some faith in it, that there is some logical explanation for it, for a flying mountain. And apparently it wasn't just a levitating mountain, it had wings. So what is the ratio between wingspan and size of a mountain? Interesting. Okay, next verse. 13. Sakayam paritam drishtva jambo bali saka surit akyayat soridam sakrur hatashyapi samacharan. When the demon Jambasura saw that his friend Bali had fallen, he appeared before Indra, the enemy, just to serve Bali Maharaj with friendly behavior. There was a time in our history where there was a conflict with another community here. And the word got out that some devotees there's a fight. So all the devotees were kind of going to that place to appear before the enemy, you could say, just to serve the other devotees. So this is a very common event. If you have someone that you are serving and they're in difficulty, you want to go and help them. So this is very ordinary behavior. Sa simha vaha asadya gadam ujjama rahasa jatro atadyor chakram gajam cha samaha bala. The great, powerful Jambasura, carried by a lion, approached Indra and forcefully struck him on the shoulder with his club. He also struck Indra's elephant. So these aren't games. This isn't a pastime where they're just playing, acting, where they're not really clubbing each other. We were here the other day at Kripamoya's daughter's reception, and there's a devotee called Markandeya who's a stuntman. And when he plays a stuntman, he actually plays these various acts. Now, in the course of being a stuntman, he actually got shot by a rubber bullet. And he actually got to hospital. I'm not sure if it penetrated the skin, but actually it concussed him. So this isn't a game like that. Oh yes, we're in the pastimes of Krishna. We're going to be mentioning the Srimad Bhagavatam. We're going to go through the action. These are real things. People want to kill people. People get hurt. People get, damaged. They die. And now there's also, here's another controversy. Why is he being carried by a lion? This raises a number of thoughts. And it's nowadays you don't hear much discussion about, and again, the theme of the purport later, you don't hear about other beings from other planets. You don't talk about it. It's poo-pooed. It's refuted. It's mocked. It's scorned in the mainstream news. And here we're finding out not only is someone riding a lion, hang on a minute, last time I saw that, it was in a Hollywood movie. That's where it comes from. This is a fictitious story. Tolkien must have been at it or something. Actually, we know that Tolkien, he read the Vedas, so maybe his stories were influenced by this and not the other way around. So somehow or other, we read the demigod, they like to ride living beings, just like it's a great pleasure to ride a bullock cart. We find sometimes when someone hasn't been on a bullock cart before, they find a pleasure in riding a bullock cart. So similarly, the demigods sometimes choose to have various animals to ride on. Brahma rides a swan, Durga rides a tiger. Here, Jambasura is riding a lion. Now, it also suggests that not only are there human-like people on the higher planets, but there's also animals. There's also lions. I didn't realize, but actually there's lions in India, in northwest India. There's lions there. I only thought lions were in Africa, but there's North Indian lions. So similarly, if you go to demigod planets, you also may find lions. It's described in one verse that all the cows in the universe, they're descendants of Surabhi. They're her descendants. So similar, there's a lineage of various animals. 15. Gada prahara vyahito brisham vivala gada janabhyam darasharinam sprishtva kashmalam paramam yasyo. Being beaten by Jambasura's club, Indra's elephant was confused and aggrieved. Thus it touched its knees to the ground and fell unconscious. So you can imagine, you get clubbed, you definitely get a bit confused, aggrieved, get angry, and it might be hit so much you become unconscious. This reminded me, we have a bull called Dhruva, who similarly does such actions. When the work gets hard, he touches his knees to the ground. He just slumps down on his front knees. Are you not sure? Is he actually working too hard? Or is he bluffing us? Because sometimes they bluff. We've seen it many times. They have a symptom of hanging their tongues. You turn back home, tongue comes in, and off they go. And the other day, some of the devotees were getting very frustrated because they were in the fields turning the hay, and every time you went past a tree, the bull just pull right under the shade. didn't want to go. So anyway, one of our bulls particularly, he likes to kneel down The work gets tough. Tata rata matalina haribir dasha shatar vrita anito dvipam ashridja ratam aruruhu vibhu. Thereafter, Matali, Indra's chariot driver, brought Indra's chariot, which was driven by 1,000 horses. Indra then left his elephant and got onto the chariot. Tasyatat prayaya karma yantur danava satama shulena jvalata tamtu smayamana hanam ride. Appreciating Matali's service, Jambasura, the best of the demons, smiled. Nonetheless, he struck Matali in the battle with the trident of blazing fire. This is quite common also. Whatever your great skill is, if you see someone who is doing something in your area of interest, you appreciate them, even if they're an enemy. So here, Jambasura is appreciating that Matali, because the elephant went down, he immediately took responsibility and brought back a chariot of 1,000 horses. Now, there's also a problem with a chariot of 1,000 horses, I would say. If one horse gets killed, you have to stop. I don't know how this works. How would you actually physically fight a battle with 1,000 horses? Because if you've got one horse, okay, it's one thing changing one horse. If you've got 2 horses or 4 horses on a chariot, if one dies, the whole thing stops. If you've got 1,000, I don't know how it works. But there's something going on. It's also interesting that here's Indra, the demigod of rain, who's fighting a battle. What happens to the rain? So there's some ability that they live their lives, but at the same time their responsibilities for the elements of nature still goes on. I don't know how it goes on, but somewhere it does go on. So even though he's appreciating Matali, he didn't let go. This is actually a strength. Sometimes you may appreciate someone else, and you may drop your guard. In battle you can't do that. That was a fantastic maneuver you did there. And then you let the enemy fire their weapons at you. That wouldn't do. You'd die. So you have to appreciate them, but at the same time, you still have to continue the battle. So this is what happened. He appreciated him, but it didn't stop him throwing a trident of blazing fire. Sehe rajam sudar marsham tatvam alambya matali indru janbasya sankrido vrajenda parhachachchira. Although the pain was extremely severe, Matali tolerated it with great patience. Indra, however, became extremely angry at Jambasura. He struck Jambasura with his thunderbolt and thus severed his head from his body. Now this is interesting. We can learn from this verse. The first thing you reflect is that Matali was a chariot driver. So his responsibility was to drive the chariot on the battle. And if someone fired weapons at him, he couldn't put the reins down and start fighting back. He had to tolerate the weaponry that was attacking him for the sake of the driver or the person he was driving. So he had to tolerate the weapons hitting him. And you can imagine that. One thing is if you've got a gun yourself. The other thing is if you're escorting someone who's got the gun and they have to defend you, you have to really have to have faith in that. At one time when I was in the Marines, I saw this manual of a defensive fortification where you had a certain kind of a bank of soil in front of you and you were kind of shooting to the side. So the enemy that were coming straight for you, you couldn't shoot them because you couldn't see them. You had to rely on your friends on either side to shoot them. And that's very difficult, to have your protection in the hands of somebody else. But in this case, this is what chariot drivers do. Their duty is to serve the main warrior to drive the chariot round. Now we can learn from this. We can learn the art of tolerance. Because sometimes we see, not sometimes, there are devotees who are very good, you could say, on the front line. They are the claws and the teeth of the preaching mission. They go out there, they do missionary work. And then other devotees are assisting them. And you could say, they can learn from this verse, they can tolerate not being in the limelight for the sake of the whole preaching mission going on. So Matali, he had to tolerate the pain for the sake of Indra fighting the battle. So we can tolerate sometimes not being in the limelight. We can tolerate sometimes not feeling so important for the sake of the preaching mission. Janbam Shrutva Hatam Tasya Jatayo Naradat Rishe Namachista Bala Palas Tatrapetus Tvananvita. When Narada Rishi informed Jambasura's friends and relatives that Jambasura had been killed, the three demons named Namuchi, Bala and Paka arrived on the battlefield in great haste. This is interesting. Why did Indra do this? Sorry, why did Narada do this? What was in his mind by telling them what was going on? Was he trying to kill them? In what way was he their well-wisher? Interesting, very difficult thing. It's like, you may tell someone, hey, do you know about this? There's a conflict going on, and you tell them, and they go to the battle and they get killed. Interesting. I don't know the answer, but it's kind of interesting consideration. Vacho bi purusher indram aradanto siya mamaso sarer avakiram mega darabir eva parvatam. Rebuking Indra with harsh, cruel words that were piercing to the heart, these demons showered him with arrows just as torrents of rain wash a great mountain. So these words were described differently. When Bali was speaking, they weren't aggrieving, but these are harsh, cruel words. Maybe they weren't truthful, maybe they're just vindictive words. And they were piercing his heart. And at the same time, he was being pierced by these arrows, a shower of arrows. It's like a machine gun. Somewhere you see torrents of rain just splashing down. So sometimes again, when you're in the Marines, you have a machine gun, and every fourth bullet it's called a tracer. Otherwise you can't see it. You can't see where the bullets are going, but it's got a tracer. You can see where the bullets are landing, because when someone's at distance, you don't shoot your gun like this, because the bullet will just hit the ground. You have to kind of set a trajectory up and over, and by seeing the tracer, you can follow where the bullets are going. So with arrows, perhaps you can see them clearly because it's a stick. But it's described here that torrents of rain. So how many arrows was this person able to unleash? How was it done? How would you put so many arrows on a bow? It was done, but how was it done? Is arrow would it multiply on the bow? These are all dilemmas. We have to have some notion about believing this. Harindasha Shatanya Jo Haryasvasya Bala Sarai Tavad Bir Ardayam Asa Yugapal Laguhastavan. Quickly handling the situation on the battlefield, the demon Bala put all of Indra's 1,000 horses into tribulation by simultaneously piercing them all with an equal number of arrows. So he was firing 1,000 arrows simultaneously from his bow. Shatabhyam matalim paka ratam savayavan pritak sakrit sandana mokshena tad adbhutam abud rane. Paka, another demon, attacked both the chariot with all its paraphernalia and the chariot driver. Matali by fitting 200 arrows to his bow and releasing them all simultaneously. This was indeed a wonderful act on the battlefield. Namachi panchadashabi svarna punchur maheshubi ahatya vyanadat sankhye sattoyo ivatodayaha. Then Namuchi, another demon, attacked Indra and injured him with 15 very powerful golden feathered arrows, which roared like a cloud full of water. So why is it mentioned that they're golden feathered? Is it simply an aesthetic observation? Is it the poetry of the writer? Did they have some flight aspect to the arrows? Savata sharakutena shakram sarata sharatim chadayam asur asura pravritir suyam ivam buddha. Other demons covered Indra along with his chariot and chariot driver with incessant showers of arrows, just as clouds cover the sun in the rainy season. So then we come to this verse. So there it is. He's been covered by arrows, just as clouds cover the sun in the rainy season. You can't see the sun anymore. So on the battlefield, Indra, their beloved leader is now, they can't see him anymore. He's covered in a shower of arrows like the cloud covering the sun. And then we get this verse. The demigods, being severely oppressed by their enemies and being unable to see Indra on the battlefield, were very anxious. Having no captain or leader, they began lamenting like traders in a wrecked vessel in the midst of the ocean. And then we heard this purport about trading. But it's very important. Leaders are very important. In fact, the Bhagavad Gita says how important they are. They have a potency about them. Yad yadacharji shresas tat tadeva taro janaha sayat pramanam kurate lokus tad anavartate. And I remember Vidyanamaj giving an explanation about this verse. And he said, in every case, people follow a leader and they're influenced by the standards they set. There's a potency there. You may say, no, I don't. In fact, often children express they become their fathers. The things their father didn't do, they find themselves sometimes doing the same things. Or their mothers, they repeat, they become. So leaders are very powerful. And without a leader, then things can be lost. We hear in the early verses of the Bhagavad Gita that when the great leaders of the society would be killed, this is one of our Jews' arguments, then the whole society will become lost, become corrupt. So here on the battlefield, you need a leader. And in fact, sometimes if you took out the leader, the whole war would be won. Or if you took out their leader, if your leader was lost, you'd be lost. So it's very important. And sometimes, again, when I was in the Marines, if you're a sniper, you shoot the leaders. You shoot the guy who's making the orders, and therefore you wouldn't be doing your superior a favor by making it clear that he was the superior, because he'd be shot first. If you take out the leader, then what do the other guys know what they should do? So you shoot the leader, you shoot the communication officer, you basically destroy their ability to function. So here Indra, the leader of the demigods, has been taken out. They can't find him, and they're lost. And it's interesting now, this example is given here, that Prabhupada draws an example and it says like traders in a wrecked vessel in the midst of the ocean. The words Bina Nava, like we said, Bina Ashtida. 8 separated material entities. You imagine how troubling it would be if you're on a boat and suddenly it breaks up into different bits. Now, if you're a businessman and you have a certain, you could say, intrinsic connection with your stock. This is your life. This is part of your very existence. If someone steals your stock, you feel it intrinsically. So if you're a trader and you're in the middle of the ocean and suddenly your ship disintegrates under you, you're going to feel a bit lost. You're going to feel lost because the very object of your love and affection and source of existence is lost. But you're also lost because what are you going to do in the middle of the ocean? So this is how the demigods were feeling at that point. They'd lost everything. Indra can't be seen. He's been covered by a cloud and they can't see him. So they're feeling such a lamentation. So here Srila Prabhupada then, and oftentimes Srila Prabhupada does this very amazing type of analysis that we can understand, he says, that from this example that there are ships in the heavenly planets. In the upper planetary systems, there is navigation. There is shipping, traders, navigation as their occupational duty. They're trading. Interesting. We might have an idea that people are just sitting around in the heavenly planet eating fruits and just cohorting or whatever they do. We often hear about that too. But here there's something going on. There's some trading, which means there's bodies of water that are big enough at least for a ship. It's a big lake or it's an ocean. And here it's not indicated they're just going from planet to planet. Was there interplanetary trading? I don't know. That's not mentioned here. But certainly there was some ships in the upper planetary systems. Controversial stuff. Doesn't work well with Darwin. Do we believe Darwin? We have to be clear. The whole world educational system is telling people that Darwin is it. He's got the answer. We are the current stage of evolutionary development, and so many thousands of years ago we came out of whatever it is. How can you have ships on another planet in an other planet system with an idea of Darwin. So one is wrong and one is right. And we have to be clear that Darwin is wrong and the Srimad Bhagavatam is right. Now, people won't, the media is very selective what they tell you. They won't tell you certain things. I was listening to a lecture recently by Sariputta, and he was mentioning this point. Why is it, the question is, well, why don't people know about these things? There's so much evidence that people have met people from other planets. Why isn't it known very well? And he said that there's some research and some studies that the government they don't want people to know these things because it destabilizes you. For example, if there's ships that can come into your airspace and you can't stop them, you can't even identify them, it makes your feeling of defense very unnerving. It's like, for example, now we've got this big fence on the southern boundary. We think we're protected from the southern boundary now, whereas before we weren't sure where people would come in and what they would do. So imagine that people can actually just walk through the wall. You feel a bit unnerving. Actually, what do I do with this? It suddenly affects your ability to function in society because the people can just come and take everything that you have. So there's a suppression of this information. But the Bhagavatam just lays it out as it is. There are people on other planets that have ships and they're trading. And Prabhupada says anything. There's no reason to accept that on other planet systems there are no living beings. Hang on a minute. We may think they haven't found anything there. This is the case. They went there and they didn't find anything. Now Srila Prabhupada, he would say, if they didn't find anything, they didn't go. He was so convinced about this point that if they didn't find it, they didn't go there. It's like if you go to the North Pole and you said, actually I went to the North Pole, there's nothing living there. You didn't go to the North Pole. If you go to the North Pole, you'll see there's whales, there's no penguins. Penguins are only in the South Pole, but there is polar bears. So similarly, if you go to the South Pole and you say, I went to the South Pole, there's nothing living there, you didn't go to the South Pole. Because if you go there, you'll find there's penguins. And similarly, if you go to the desert and you say there's nothing living there, you didn't go to the desert. Because you didn't see the spiders, you didn't see the camels. So when someone says, we went there and we didn't see anything, then Prabhupada says, you didn't go there. Because you didn't find anything. You should find something. This was his conviction. So we also have to be convinced in the same way. And it's difficult because the whole society is repeating the same thing. We went there, we didn't find anything. And we have to be convinced they didn't go there, and we know they didn't go there because they didn't find anything. And one time, Srila Prabhupada, many times, he gives this example, logical example. Wherever you go on this planet, you find life. Everywhere you go. You can't find a single place in this planet that you go where you can't find life. So you use the same logic. You can't find life. You find life here. You find life. Go to the bottom of the ocean. You find life. You go to the edge of a volcano. You find life. So if you go to another planet, you'll also find life. There is anyway. So the here Srila Prabhupada is exhibiting this point. There is nothing vacant. There is no planet vacant in this material world. And Srila Prabhupada is expressing that conviction. Okay, we'll stop there. If anybody has any questions, comments.